No, you're a sad man, James. You're a sad man.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you.
Constituents in Great Yarmouth.
People in the working class communities from which I come, Rupert, turn down your
talking class drivel. Class drivel. That's what it is. You can't do anything
absolute
except
nonsense.
talk. You are the elite. Class drivel.
This is only the second time I've seen the Reform MP for Great Yarmouth, Rupert Lowe, but I must admit he has impressed me with the way he holds his own. Here he debates a Labour Socialist. Things get very heated to the point insults get thrown around, but in the end he brilliantly exposes this Labour government. The debate was about these comments.
I've been shocked by the response from some of those in political parties on the right who once claimed to care about law and order. After rioters attacked the police, they should have given full-throated backing to our brave officers. Instead, too often we've seen them undermine the integrity and authority of the police. The Tories, with their mates in Reform, are just becoming right-wing wreckers.
Reform is a new party that came third in terms of overall votes in its first ever election. A party on the rise that could potentially threaten Labour in the long run. And yet she just dismisses them as far right and populist. The problem is Labour didn't come out and condemn all rioting and violence equally. Oh no, it's only a problem when it is done by people considered far right. If any minority group commits violence, that's fine, because to call it out is racist. Romanians go on the rampage and the police literally run away. That is what people are talking about when they say two-tier policing. Seems Labour blames everything on Reform and Nigel Farage. This guy pushes the same narrative in this debate. They are responsible for the riots, he says. In other words, Labour are going to carry on pushing their agenda, and anyone who speaks out against it is far right, stirring up hate. He shakes his head in disbelief when Reform is referred to as centre-right. In his eyes, anyone who disagrees with him is far right. The National Front is far right, not the Reform Party. Last but not least, he then starts with the classism. Even though Rupert Lowe is an elected Reform MP, apparently he can't represent the working class because he comes from a privately educated background. Some posh people certainly are clueless and detached from the working class. But that doesn't mean all posh people are, and all of them are incapable of understanding or representing the working class.
Going head-to-head on this now are Reform UK MP Rupert Lowe and former Labour advisor James Mathewson. Good morning to you, good afternoon to you, or good evening rather. I'm so used to doing breakfast and morning shows on this channel, it's wired in. Rupert, I'll start with you. Thank you for joining me. What is a right-wing wrecker, and are you one of them?
Well, firstly, Leo, let me say that I don't think in the history of this country we've ever been led by such left-wing virtue signalling, pork-barreling clowns, which we've now got in power. To call us right-wing is a misnomer. We are not right-wing. We are simply representative of the British people. And the reason that people are voting for reform is because the duopoly, which is Labour and the Tories, have increasingly moved to the left, supported by a very woke media. And at the end of the day, they've lost sight of what reality is. So what we represent is reality for the British people. And I frankly think that whilst nobody condones violence, if Yvette Cooper, Keir Starmer, and the other sort of gift-receiving Labour Party front bench, ultimately, if they don't listen to the public quite rightly is concerned about mass legal and illegal immigration, which is the root cause of all our problems. And if they don't address that, then we will be doing to Labour what we did to the Tories last time. And red wall seats will all go to Reform. And I don't think it's fair to call us right-wing. We're not right-wing. We're just representative of common sense, decency, and the British people.
James, Reform have 5 MPs to Labour's 400 plus. Why is Yvette Cooper even mentioning them in her speech today? I mean, I heard more about Reform than I did her policy on immigration.
But she's talking about the safety of the country. She's talking about security. She's talking about our police force, which is her responsibility. And she would be wrong not to mention the riots because they were such a news piece. I mean, we had rolling coverage, including on this channel.
Well, what's that got to do with reform?
What does it have to do with reform?
Yeah, what have the riots got to do with reform? Rupert Lowe donates his £5,000 a month salary to charity. I mean, what's he got to do with rioting?
Sorry, Ben, I think Rupert Lowe can defend himself. I don't think he needs you to do it. So what you see from Yvette Cooper today is exactly the situation, exactly the reality. It's talking about reform. She's talking about many other people, including reform, not just reform, but those people who stirred the pot, those people who, on political platforms, and that's the crucial thing here, actually encouraged or allowed this activity to happen in communities like the community that I come from in the northeast of England, where businesses were destroyed, the police were attacked, and we had complete loss of law and order. We had rolling coverage of it. Of course we did in the media, as Rupert says, the woke media, apparently, which I don't know if that includes you, Ben, but I would love to know what his definition of woke is.
Only on weekends, James, only on weekends. Rupert, you must admit you are, if not far right, reform is indeed widely accepted as centre right.
Well, I don't accept that. I get very irritated by it's largely a sort of BBC, the woke monopolistic BBC,
God.
which
Ben.
does not represent. Can I speak, James? You've had you've given us your little bit. And at the end of the day, you talk about protecting the police. Well, you haven't done very much to protect the two policemen who did an extremely good job at Manchester Airport, who are currently sitting in limbo because nobody is actually dealing with the issue. So I think for you to start speaking about the way the police are being treated, I think you need to take a good look at that before you start preaching about that. But what I would say is we are not far right. If Labour and the Tories, as I call them, a duopoly. They're, as George Galloway says, they're two cheeks of the same backside. They have lost touch with the British people. London, I think, is a lost cause, but actually outside London, in my old constituency, the West Midlands, in other parts of the country, where I actually run businesses, unlike James, who I think most of his career has been in the media. At the end of the day, these are real people who have to work extremely hard for their living. They don't pork barrel a living on the back of a bloated state, which is what we now have. And they've completely lost touch with reality. We've got 9 million people who aren't working. We've got a society which is dysfunctional. We're far too highly taxed. The state is far too big. There's absolutely no accountability to the taxpayer, which is the British public. And at the end of the day, radical change is needed. And if people don't vote for reform in the next election, there's not going to be very much left of Great Britain, because I can tell you something, this economy is not going to improve
let me bring
under
James
a Labour government that hasn't got a clue.
James, you talk about law and order, but does law and order look like setting thousands of prisoners free before their sentences are up? Or closing female prisons, as the Justice...
I would rather deal with what Rupert just said, if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course.
I haven't worked in the media my whole life at all, Rupert. I left school at 16 with no GCSEs. I worked my whole life. I've worked through the trade union movement and ended up by accident in politics. You, however, are a private school individual who was in the city of London as a banker.
I'm proud of that, James. I'm proud of that. You can try and impugn me for that. I'm proud of it. So that doesn't mean anything to me. That's water off a duck's back.
One at a time, because we can't hear otherwise.
Don't talk over me, Rupert, right? You were a privately schooled, educated individual who ended up as a banker in London, who is now trying to convince working class people, like the families that I come from, the communities that I come from, that instead of looking at people like you, who have crashed our economy over many, many, many decades, that instead they should look at people and they should punch down.
How have I crashed the economy?
Let Rupert answer that, please.
People who are coming here with very little, who we are housing in temporary accommodation because the Home Office has got a huge backlog, who are then being attacked by fascists.
What a load of absolute piffle and drivel,
like yourself.
Let Rupert respond, please.
Absolute drivel.
Absolute nonsense.
Drivel. And what you need to do, how have I crashed the economy? I've fostered businesses, I've employed people, I've got businesses that have been going 100 years. You speak to the staff. You're a banker, mate.
You're a banker.
You cannot say that. You're talking the usual.
James, let him finish. James, you've just gone on, so you need to let him finish.
We have to put up with.
James, you need to let him finish if you go off on a tirade with accusations. How did he crash the economy?
How have I crashed the economy?
Right, listen. The point is, what I'm saying
answer the question if you would.
We have got a man here who is pretending to speak for the working class of Britain, who knows less about the working class than anybody. He knows less than you or I, Ben. He's not remotely working class. He's as working class as Nigel Farage. And you do not represent...
So what? Go and speak to my constituents in Great Yarmouth.
People in the
Go and speak
working
to them.
class communities from which I come, Rupert, turn down
You're
your
talking class drivel. Class
term.
drivel, that's what it is. You can't do
It's
anything
absolute
except
nonsense.
talk.
You are
Broadly
the
speaking,
elite.
class
You are
drivel,
the elite
James.
of
All right,
You
we're going to call time on this, gents. James, I would just say, you're saying that Rupert and Reform are out of touch with the working class. They've won swathes of votes from the working class, and polling suggests that the red wall, after voting Labour, is going back to Reform.
Ben, are you a spokesman for the Reform Party?
No, I'm just telling you what happened in the election. I'm telling you.
I thought you were here to moderate.
Sorry.
I thought you were here to moderate. You're not moderating.
I am. I'm just James. I'm just giving you some facts about the election and polling. That was it.
Give some facts the other way. Give some facts about the Reform Party. Give some facts about the fact that we have seen Nigel Farage use his political platform to divide people and cause violence against people who are coming here.
Okay,
he'd reject that.
Absolute hatred and division throughout the country.
James Mathewson, thank you. Rupert Lowe, thank you.
You're a sad man, James. You're a sad man.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much to you both.